Grab a cup of coffee and start your day with Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life features stories to inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Visit cyacyl.com.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Are you tired of feeling empty and unhappy? Do you have behavior patterns that you would like to break? Does life feel like it's moving so fast that you sometimes feel like you're veering out of control? Today's guest, Jude Bijou, author of the book Attitude Reconstruction, provides a GPS for your internal navigation system that can guide you to arrive at satisfying relationships like a dream life and internal peace. Attitude Reconstruction can help you stop settling for sadness, anger, and fear and infuse your life with love, peace, and joy. Jude is a psychotherapist, educator, and workshop leader. Her theory of attitude reconstruction evolved over the course of more than 30 years of working with clients. Welcome, Jude. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's just my pleasure to be here.
Jude, your book, Attitude Reconstruction, when I was reading it, I have to tell you, it was dead on in my life. So I'm very excited that you're here today to discuss your important work. In your book, you state that emotions are the key to how we live our life. And you say that it basically boils down to six, the emotions of sadness, anger, fear, joy, love, and peace. How important is our emotional constitution in how we live our life?
It's really important because we see things through the lens of our emotions. And what I have really discovered is that all of our bad attitudes and our good attitudes, but the bad attitudes that are the ones that give us problem, all stem back to these unexpressed emotions, to this unexpressed sadness, anger, and fear. And that if we remove that energy, because emotions are just pure energy in the body, and if we move that energy, then we make room for joy, love, and peace.
Jude, these unexpressed emotions, it basically comes from the fact that most of our entire life we've been taught to suppress our emotions. You're not allowed to get angry or don't cry because you're a baby. So how do we undo what we've been taught for our whole life?
Well, I think there's a couple of ways. One, we can use children as a model, because what they do is when something happens, they have that emotional reaction. They are denied the cookie, and they have that temper tantrum. They flop down on the floor, and then they get over it. They're back to being present and happy and full. And that's where we want to be. And so we can use them. And the other thing that we can do is once we have an experience of, oh, I felt some fear, and I moved it out of my body, and then to see what that brings, then we can start to go, oh, this works. Oh, those messages are not as important as what I find in my own experience.
Jude, what does the suppression of our emotions really do to us? What impact does it have?
Well, it creates really all of that sadness, anger, and fear, because we're in those loops. How we think will just reinforce those ways that we feel about ourselves, and it comes out in our communication. If we're angry, it comes out in that way. And if we're sad, it comes out in how we talk and what we think. And so it's so impactful to start to take stock about what am I feeling, which of these emotions, because what's so lovely is we only have three that we have to be concerned about. Am I feeling sadness, anger, and fear? Because we don't have to worry about joy, love, and peace. Let those come. But if we start to identify what emotion am I feeling, what's the physiology in my body, then we really can go, all right, how am I going to find a physical and constructive way to move it out of my body?
Jude, I took the test in your book to try to determine my core emotions. And how can we, short of taking the test in your book, are there ways that we can determine what our core emotional style is?
Yes, there are several ways. One is we can look at what kind of thoughts that we have or what kind of actions that we take. So we can look at our behavior. That will determine if I'm focused on the outside world and not liking it and thinking people should be different than they are. That's an indicator that I've got a lot of unexpressed anger. If I'm down on myself and I'm running those messages that go, oh, nobody likes me, and I'll never get ahead, and I, can't do this, and what's wrong with me, that's an indicator that we've got a lot of unexpressed sadness. And if we're in the future, if we're way in the future or way in the past and making big global generalities, that indicates that we've got a lot of unexpressed fear.
So, Jude, once we can determine which category we seem to fall into, what are some tools that we can use in order to express these emotions and then release them?
Luckily, again, we only have these three that we have to deal with, are sadness, anger, and fear. And so if we take sadness, it's like, what's the emotion? What do we feel? And that is that heaviness, and we feel like we want to cry. So the first is give ourselves permission to have that cry. And while we're doing it, don't think those thoughts about, oh, there's something wrong with me, oh, I'll never succeed. Just go, I just need to cry. It's okay. It's okay. That's the kind of self-talk while we're just letting our body do what it needs to do. Things have happened, and we need to just acknowledge them and let that energy out of our body. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, for some people, it's hard to cry. Maybe people haven't cried in years. So it's like, all right, let me start somewhere else. And maybe it's like, okay, gee, I get what Jude's saying a little bit. I do have fear. Maybe I'm worried all the time. Now, there's a good indicator of fear, or I'm feeling anxious, that sensation in my body, that agitation. Those are indicators that I feel fear. Well, what does my body naturally want to do? It doesn't. What we do is we tighten up. We go, stop breathing and tighten. Where the body really wants to do is shake and shiver. Because when we think about what does a dog do at the vet, it shakes and shivers. What do we do, like when we see swimmers? What are they doing? They're shaking and shivering. They're letting that tension out of the body. And what we have to do is start to be, I say, a shaking fool, a shivering fool. And that is to make those sounds, because you're not going, oh, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? It's just, I'm just scared, and just shake and shiver the body out the arms, like you're putting your fingers in the, get something icky out of the drain, and making those sounds, up the back, and out the arms, and in the legs, and in the mouth. But if we do that for just a minute is a long time to do that, we'll feel a shift right away. We just move the energy.
What's interesting about what you're saying is that when we talk about emotions, very often we don't see the correlation to our physical being. So what you're saying, that the solution is something very physical to cure the emotion, and I find that interesting.
Yes, that's exactly right, because that's the foundation. Everything, how we think and how we speak, and whether we can listen to our intuition and hear it, and our behavior, our actions, are all determined by these emotions. And that if we move those out of the body, then it's easier to think new thoughts. It's easier to have some creative thinking, to go, oh, I need to talk with this person. Now, rather than being really constricted, we can go, all right, well, what's the specific thing? What do I want to talk about? What do I need to say? What's true for me? We've got so much more clarity and openness and flexibility once we move that stuck energy out of the body. And that's the thing, it doesn't take long.
And it sounds like you're telling us to just let go of that control and release it. Just stop being so in control.
Exactly. Find a safe place and just go, I'm just going to try it. Especially like if you can't sleep at night, because that's a problem that plagues our society, and it's just getting more and more. What do I need to do? Let me just try. Go into the bathroom or whatever and just shake and shiver.
That's your favorite, isn't it, Jude?
Absolutely, because it comes in so handy. If I have to make a phone call that's a little intimidating, just shake and shiver, or whatever I need to do that I'm resisting doing. It's like move a little energy, and then there's some space.
Jude, you say that there are tools that we're born with that can create lasting change. What are some of these tools?
Well, one of the tools is to handle our emotions in a more constructive way, in a physical way, really honoring that it's just pure energy in the body. And if I'll just do what's natural, it will move. So that's really the most fundamental tool. So the second tool that we can use to make changes is our thinking. And that is, for me, it's identify exactly where our destructive thoughts are. Write them down. And then we're looking for contradictions to those thoughts that are true. So it's not like if we're weighing, a lot overweight, we don't go, I'm skinny and beautiful. No, that's not the opposite. What's the opposite? It's like, I am going to lose some weight. I want to lose some weight. I want to be different than I am. So what we're looking for is contradictions. So that if we go, I've got so much to do, if that's one of our thoughts, maybe the opposite would be one thing at a time. One thing at a time. One thing at a time. And that's such a pacifying kind of thought. I call them truths because they're unequivocally true. So we instead, whenever we hear the old thinking, we go, hold on, that's an old thought. What's truth? What's higher truth? And I say, make a pocket full of those truths. Find 5 or 6 truths that really contradict your old thinking. And then 100,000 reps over and over. Here's that thought. Nope, going to put in this other one. But way before 100,000, you get what I say, divine shifts. Oh, that's true. People are the way they are. They're not the way I want them to be. Oh, I get it. Stop pushing. People are the way they are, not the way I want them to be. So that's the second tool. Use our thinking of what's true to change our emotional state to more joy, love, and peace.
And I think that's an important one because so many of us are habitual negative thinkers that if we can start to make that shift between what we think to be the reality and what the reliable truth is, I think that that's a very important key, what you're telling us to do. And also, Jude, I think at this point, we're going to let our listeners think about that for a moment while we take a break for this week's Good Life Tips. Stay with us for information to help you make the positive life changes that we talk about on the show. When we return, I'll continue my discussion with Jude Bijou. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Our guest today is Jude Bijou, author of the book, Attitude Reconstruction. Jude, before break, we were talking about some of the tools that our listeners can implement to create lasting change in their lives. And I know that you've spoken so much about the importance of communication in order to talk effectively and to resolve differences. What are your 4 rules of effective communication?
Well, the good news is there's only 4, because regardless of the situation, whether I'm at work, whether it's with my family, whether it's with a stranger, the same 4 rules apply. And the first rule is I must talk about myself. That's what's true for me. That's all I really know. When I go into the opposite of myself, which is telling you about you, this is what you did and you're like this, boy, all of a sudden communication is over. So first thing, just turn inward. What's true for me about, the second rule, a specific topic. One topic at a time. So that's the second rule, is to stay specific. This is the event that I want to talk about, and this is this is what's true for me about that, and this is what I specifically want. This is what didn't work, and this is what I would like. So we're using I's and specifics, because those are the 2 really powerful rules, but they come along, the third rule comes along, and that is kindness. What do I want? What's going to move things forward? What's going to be helpful here? So that's the rule. Talk about myself, be specific, and look for kindness. And the 4th rule is to listen. 50% of the time talk, 50% of the time listen.
Now, Jude, by incorporating these communication rules into our life, what impact can it really have in our relationships with others?
It brings so much more closeness. Because, again, when we're in that anger, which is that out there, that you, we're creating separation and accentuating our differences. And when we turn around and disclose information about ourselves, then it's like, one, people can listen. Oh, she's saying something that's true for her. And we're also empowering ourselves. And so it's like, oh, I see you more. I know what's true for you. So we're in our authentic self, and people can pick up with that. I'm not trying to make everybody else wrong. I'm just trying to express what's true for me. And so I often say, start your communication with, this is hard for me, and I have something I want to say. And then you can say, well, because I've taken a few minutes beforehand to figure out what is the specific event. What do I want to talk about? It's not 20 topics. It's not 10 topics. It's one topic at a time. Because we know, especially couples, that they start on one topic, especially late at night, and 2 hours later, they've gone and brought in the whole kitchen sink, a dozen different articles, and haven't found resolution on any of them. They've opened up all these cans of worms, but haven't found resolution. So specifics is one of my most favorite words, because we weren't taught that we need to be specific in our thinking and in our communication. We're specific in medicine, in business, in science, in directions, in manufacturing, in cooking, architecture. We use specifics, but nobody told us we need to stay specific.
Jude, we've been talking about destructive attitudes, and before we run out of time, can you share some examples of destructive attitudes and how they can be transformed?
Absolutely. And let's go back to this fear, one of the fear core attitudes, because there's 4 attitudes that go with each emotion. What's really lovely, let me just go back just a second. There's these emotions, and they exist in pairs. So if we can go from feeling fear, which is that agitation, to the opposite, which is to feel peace. The physiologies are exactly the opposite. So if I'm really out of the present and I'm worrying about everything and I'm overwhelmed and I'm going around like a chicken with my head cut off, that's not going to make me enjoy what my present experience is. So I do need a thought that is going to contradict that. And it might be something like, everything will be all right. I'll handle the future in the future. So we start to think that thought, and then we're freed up to go, well, what does my intuition say that I need to do about whatever this specific topic is? Like whether I'm going to take a trip, whether I'm going to go and visit my friend. What does my intuition say? And then we can go, all right, now I can communicate that. Now I'm getting clear about what I really want. So rather than going, oh, I don't know, and what do you think I should do, and all that, we've really come back into that centered, quiet self and found our own truth, and then we can implement it, and we feel better. Then we can say, oh, I don't have to bite my fingernails, or I'm not losing sleep over it, because I have applied some of the tools that are really simple to overcome those negative attitudes that are not creating the kind of existence that I want to have.
So, Jude, you spoke about fear, peace. What are the other combinations?
Well, we go from sadness, which is heavy and down, to joy, which is buoyant and up and light. And as we're doing that, we go from being down on ourselves, which we do when we have sadness, to feeling good about ourselves, knowing who we are. And the third pair is anger. When we're angry, we want to push out and destroy, and I don't like you, you're not okay. And we want to go to the opposite, which is love, which is bringing everybody toward us, inclusive, unity, unifying. And that is what we can experience as we deal with our anger and start to accept what is, because that's really the key with anger. Accept what is, and then we can decide what kind of action we need to take.
Jude, is the transformation process, is it a conscious process? Do we literally have to stop and ask ourselves the questions that you just posed?
No. What happens is the more we practice, the more it just starts to get spontaneous. So we start to feel a sensation, oh, I need to just shiver for a second, or I need to go and get my anger out. I just, I can feel that I'm just like got that gloom and doom, and I'm just not hating everybody this morning. So it's like, okay, let me move that energy out. But it gets much easier when we start to go, okay, these tools are so simple and they work. Let me just practice them, and then I'll see the result. We can find huge benefit, remarkable and noticeable differences by doing some very simple shifting.
The book is Attitude Reconstruction by Jude Bijou. Jude, if our listeners would like to get more information about you and your work, where can they go?
My website is attitudereconstruction.com. And what you can find on that website is that survey that you talked about right at the beginning that you filled out in the book, because it's in the book, but it's also right there at the beginning of the website. And you can identify exactly what are the strongest attitudes that are holding you back. And then you can also find articles that will give some very practical tips about how to change those, what you can do.
Or, as always, our listeners can visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on our site, read the digital magazine, listen to past shows as podcasts, take part in our book club, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Jude, thank you so much for being here with us today. As I said in the beginning, your test, your survey, the information you presented, for me, it was right on the money. I mean, I was able to very clearly identify my emotional style, and I am looking forward to incorporating some of the tips that you've presented. Thank you for being here with us, Jude.
Thank you. It's just been my pleasure.
This is Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.